All right, my friends, I have a special treat for you today. I want you to meet Yaroslav. This is the Savage Sage. If you haven't heard that name or you're not familiar with his channel, you really ought to check it out. You would go to @savage_sage on YouTube and check out his channel. He's really done some great work here. If you go to his About tab, it'll say exposing the true face of the Moscow Empire and hypocrisy of democracies. My name is Yaroslav. I grew up in Ukraine. I live in the US. I saw 42 countries. I love humanities and I wish it to prosper. And he's done these great, like really awesome videos. The first one that I saw was about a year ago, where he was talking about the how Muscovy became Russia and rebranded itself into Russia, and it was really well done. And since then, I've been keeping up with him, but he's only got like 10,000 subscribers, which I don't understand. This is bizarre, because he's like a best kept secret where he does really good work. So Yaroslav, thank you for coming on and joining me in this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me, Darren.
Okay, so we want to talk about propaganda. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, anything else that you want people to understand about you, and then we'll talk about propaganda and specifically about, well, jumping off a video that I did just the other day.
Thank you. I think the description on my profile paints me pretty accurately. I grew up in Ukraine and I live in the United States. I went to United States college, graduated there. So I have the understanding of both cultures, and I have experience living in other environments, other cultural environments. So exposing myself to such amount of cultures lets me see them better, especially the my neighboring culture, the Muscovites. And they are truly a different civilization from us. And it's not just my word. There was the scientist, I forgot his name, but he paints them as different civilization, and I believe they are. And they are jumping into that. I believe they're like the accurate word for that would be like a parasite on the Western civilization. That's the more I understand them, the more I come to that conclusion.
There is something significantly different about it. I talked about them yesterday. I put a crocodile or an alligator on the screen. I said I live in the American South. We have alligators. You, no matter how much you want this alligator to be a nice little puppy dog, it's not going to be a puppy dog. It's going to be an alligator. This is just the way that they function. And by the way, while we're talking about animals, I know somebody's going to ask me about the cat in your background, so you might want to introduce the cat before we get going any further.
That's my cat from Ukraine, Itachi.
Itachi.
Yeah, Itachi. He's a hybrid of Maine Coon. Actually, Maine Coon, that's from state of Maine, I believe. And he's a hybrid of regular cat.
Okay. Well,
He's
okay.
he's an essential attribute of my scene, my YouTube scene, my brand, Savage Sage, I guess.
Okay. All right. So we got to talking, and now I've reached out to you before, and then we reached back out. You got back to me again yesterday, day before yesterday, saying, "Hey, I can answer that," because I was talking about in one of my videos, like there's this paradox in the Russian mind. There's like we're the most awesome, dreamiest civilization ever, and yet we're embattled by on all sides. Everybody wants to take our stuff and destroy us, and we're like, right, like what's going on in the Russian mind? To help us understand that.
Yeah, that's what Orwell would describe as doublethink, where the enemy is strong. It's actually, if you read Goebbels from the Nazi
Goebbels,
Germany,
yeah, Germany.
that's one of his principles is to have this double standard in terms of how you look at your enemies. So on one way, you should paint them as strong, so that you can blame all the failures of your state onto them. So we can see that. Uh, we see some Muscovites literally blaming Obama or now Trump for some things, or like, oh, the ruble went down. Went down. Oh, it's Trump.
Hmm.
It's them. Like everything's real horrible in our country because it's them. But at the same time, oh, they're weak. Our weapons are better. We're so much better. You paint that. You paint the enemy at the same time as weak because then you can sell war much better. So this is like a clear double standard, and it's very interesting how Muscovites do that because they have lots of examples of double standards. Case in point, Ukrainians are brotherly nation to us. Ukrainians are brothers. Then Ukraine is the most wicked enemy ever, and they don't even exist. So it's like, if they don't exist, how can they be brotherly to you, right?
Yeah. So
Or like,
there's a really interesting paradox there between the way um, that they do this now and the way that they used to as the Soviet Union. Vlad Vexler talks about this. Like in the Soviet Union, they wanted their propaganda was trying to convince you it's not A is not correct. We want B. But in the Russians are like A is not correct, B is not correct, C is not correct, D is not correct. Like you just they're just throwing all kinds of gibberish at you just to confuse you. Is that your
yeah,
observation?
precisely. Their goal is to confuse you and overwhelm you. Like imagine average person who has a lot of work, a lot of challenges with life. The last thing they want to do is filter out the information. And if propaganda overwhelms them, doesn't matter what the truth is. It really does not. Like case in point with the MH17 that got shut down. Muscovites have released at least a dozen of different versions, from it being internal bomb to Ukrainian MiGs to it being stage, and it coincided with the other Malaysian airplane going missing. So like, oh, that's that missing airplane. So they overwhelmed the medias with so much or versions that their average person in Moscow Empire or in the world, they're like, the truth is hard to find. Let's just give up. And the truth is right there. They shut it down with their book missiles by giving it to collaborators on the Ukrainian side, or not just collaborators, the Russian troops imitating separatists in Ukraine. That's the truth, and they overwhelm it and confuse you. Yeah,
So your cat left. I hope you didn't offend the cat with anything you just said.
I think he just saw a bunch of birds. He wanted to
Okay, that makes sense.
just poop.
Okay, so um, now when I listen to Russian propagandists, I hear them with a double think. I want to go back to that double think kind of concept that we were just talking about. I hear them also say, like, Ukrainians are brothers, and at the same time, they are really Russians who are not Ukrainian, but they're collaborators against us. They're treasonous, so we have to exterminate them. I'm trying to understand how they can hold both things simultaneously in like it's just the mental gymnastics to be able to do this. I'm not sure that I quite understand what they're trying to get to, but help me understand the mindset as they put this forward.
Right. Well, this phenomena is, as coming back to 1984, Orwell described it pretty well, and they don't necessarily believe either. To them, it's
That's
just a shallow excuse, I believe. What I come to understand them is, uh, well, let me give you such example. Like, for example, if we take okay, so here's an example. They say that they invaded Ukraine because they're Nazis there, right? This
mhm,
this is like, I would call it layer one of their invasion. And some people who don't analyze, like, oh, there must be Nazis. Okay, that's layer one. Some people are like, wait a minute, Nazis? Show me some proof. And then they see that there is no proof, but then they go to layer two. Oh, it must have been because we provoked them. NATO expansion. Uh, that's less layer two.
mhm.
Layer three and four, and so on and so on, until you get to the essence of their essence. And their essence is that, as I paint it, as a different civilization. For them, as I come to see them, it's a game, like a sport, to deceive your enemy.
Hmm.
And they put so many layers so that a Westerner is bound to get trapped on one of those levels and not get to the truth. And the truth is just so unseen. The truth is, they're perfectly aware that there are no Nazis in Ukraine. They're perfectly aware NATO is not a threat. They're perfectly aware biolabs, all those layers. They are an empire seeking revenge, seeking to reestablish the new world order. Ukraine is supposed to be the first easy step. Ukraine was supposed to be taken within 11 days. They should have replaced our government. That was their plan, but it didn't go as planned. And then they planned to expand further. That failed. So basically, yeah, the way they hold those two different things, it's all a game. It's a game of deception. They're all on it.
Yeah,
The
it's a game, but they seem to. simultaneously be okay with deceiving their own people because those first troops were thinking like we're the Nazis. We're here to right. The first wave in seemed to be pretty well deceived about that when they were sent in. The Russian soldiers, the first group of them, not the brightest as you pointed out yesterday, or not yesterday,
in the
last week
video.
in your
Yeah.
brutally honest peek into the Russian mindset. But they did seem to be like telling Ukrainian babushkas like, "Where are the Nazis? There are no Nazis
Yeah.
here. What are you talking about?" And yeah, so they, but they also seem to think that everybody lies everywhere. Everybody does what they do, which is really interesting. Like their propaganda seems to think, like for example, we know that our in Russia, we know that our elections are fraudulent, but everybody's elections are fraudulent. That's kind of how they approach the world, not realizing that no, in other places around the world, they have real elections that where the people are actually voting and the will of the people is going forward. It's not just manipulated by the authoritarian government. It's like they don't seem to see that, or and they think like, hey, see how awesome we are. We had a 90% election. Nowhere in the world where there are free elections does it come out at 90%. Like it comes out at 60-40. It's a blowout at 65, right? I mean,
You,
if you're at 90,
Derek, you're
95, like
trying to
Bashar al-Assad
analyze
had
them.
95% in his last election, sure he did, right? Like, come on.
Yeah, you said it very well about the most famous example that I can think of is, uh, look, your TV is lying. Ah, but everyone's lying. So it plays out that mass confusion. They're lost. It's also a tactic of brainwashing, but I think if we go into the deeper understanding of them, is critical thinking, informational hygiene, taking responsibility for my own actions. Those are all principles, or how do you call it? Those are all skills. Those are all skills of adults that needs to be taught. Sometimes during the adolescence, or sometimes when the kid grows up, you need to teach them. This is how you take responsibility. This is how you filter information. This is how you think critically. Muscovite culture, it doesn't even, it's not like it teaches them to do that. It actually teaches the opposite. It infringes to them. You are nobody. You are, they actually have this term, we are small people.
Hmm.
We're small people. You're nobody. And they are up there, they are everyone. They see everything. So do as they say. So on top of not being taught how to critically think, they're being taught the opposite. They're being taught not to ask questions, and they're being taught obedience. So um, that's why when Moscow Empire invades Ukraine, less than 1% of their population, less than, I think even less than 0.1% in Moscow came out to protest.
Hmm.
Such an amount is really easy to pack into a police jail. But even if 1% of Moscow would come out, that would be equivalent to one 100,000, 30,000 people, 100,000, 130,000 people. That's just 1%. Moscow is like what, 13 million people? If 5% would come out, there would be no war. Just
Yeah.
5%. But this is what we see in the Moscow culture.
Yeah, so I don't see a Georgian kind of scenario in Moscow. I don't see
No, not a
a
coup, military
Euromaidan
coup.
kind of scenario. Not even what the Belarusians were trying to do before it was suppressed. I just don't see like. So it's interesting. After 1991, countries diverged and went different directions, right? Belarus kind of stayed as communist as they were before. I mean, they just kind of stayed on that kind of trajectory. And Ukraine was starting to kind of move toward Europe, and Russia started to go that direction. And then they kind of shifted gears and became double down on authoritarianism, not in a communist ideology. It wasn't that at all, but authoritarianism like an Assad or a Saddam Hussein. It's just all about Putin. It's not about any ideological communism is dreamy kind of way. And there are more statues now to Stalin than there like 95 out of the 110 statues to Stalin in Russia have gone up during Putin's time. Like, like
Mhm.
that's telling about like what he's trying to project or that sort of thing. So it's interesting just seeing the way that these countries acted, but I don't see the Russians rising up and overthrowing Putin. One of my viewers said, and I want to get your thought on this. Um, Ukrainians are Cossacks, Russians are serfs. And I thought,
Pretty
wow,
much.
there's something really to that. What do you think of that? Is that a fair statement?
That is a very fair statement, and in fact, I think it has imperial proof. If we There was this painter Repin, and he painted two paintings of Ukrainians and of Russians, or okay, Muscovites, and he painted Ukrainians. I will look it up, but he painted Ukrainians as this free people, just like partying, having fun, and like enjoying themselves. And he painted Muscovites as the slaves carrying a boat, tugging a boat on the land. And yeah, indeed, like if you compare it to Belarus, Ukraine, actually, I don't know if you were aware, Ukraine has one of the first constitutions in the world. And Ukraine society is based historically on freedoms. We always had elected official in Ukraine hetmanate, in Cossack government. And even when we were Russia, the original Russia, um, our people were always a kingmaker. If our people did not like who's the king, they'll just toss him out. There were examples of riots like that before. So this is the historical roots, indeed.
So I want to go back and I want to talk about a couple of your videos here, so that people who are not familiar with you get to, maybe have their appetite whet for going to your channel because I really do want to see you grow from 10,005 forward.
Uh,
Can you? Oh, go ahead.
this is that painting of Repin.
Yeah, that's quite a contrast.
So just one painter painting two different nations. So empirical evidence right there.
Oh, the
One is
joy that
partying,
Russia
another
can
is
bring to
enslaved.
Ukraine.
Hmm?
Oh, the joy that Russia can bring to Ukraine, just given that that painting.
Yeah, right.
I want to go back and talk about two of your videos. So your last one, a brutally honest peek into Russian mindset. Tell people what they'll see if they go and watch that.
I watched a conversation that I didn't expect would ever happen between a Ukrainian journalist who was talking to thousands of prisoner of war, Muscovite prisoner of war, and between ex-Russian PM, member of parliament. He actually knows Putin. So, like, those two people talking, exchanging their ideas on how they see Moscow culture is really interesting. And I translated it. I thought this would be nice to translate to Westerners. And I did. I used AI voice, and I think it came out really great.
It did come out really great, and it was really, really insightful. And if you want to understand the Russian mindset, this will help you understand that. Tell us more about like what you see in the Russian mindset, or how you see that they think differently. Like you were talking about how they're like a different culture, different breed, different something's just different than what we in the West how we think. Like we approach Russia all wrong when we think, well, let's not escalate. Let's not because maybe between England and the United States or France or something like or Germany or what we'd get the idea of don't escalate and what we're trying to do. It doesn't seem to compute at all to them. They seem to think, "Oh, they're just weak. Let's go destroy them."
I think if you take a typical school bully in the United States and you encompass all the Russian essence into like a person, it would be identical to behavior of school bully. Basically, poking your weaknesses, mm, trying to get you aggravated, trying to show who's the boss, trying to. It's just you know it better. You know better than me what typical school bully looks like. It's just the only difference is that in our case, the school bully got a terrorist, what do you call, belt of bombs around him, strapped around him, and he's like, "I'm gonna blow the whole school up. I'm gonna blow the whole school up. You dare mess with me? You dare mess with me?" But in reality, they're just an empty shell. It's That's the only difference between school bully. That's why they hate NATO that much. Imagine you're a school bully and the smaller kids got together and got protection by the big guy in the school. You can't touch them anymore.
That's a really interesting insight. That
Uh,
that that is why. So I've used an example of a bully, but I've also used the example of like Putin is. If you try to understand him as a mobster, he makes more sense than anything else that I could come up with, like a mafia boss. Like, oh yeah, that he's doing things like that more than he is like a statesman, a politician, this, that, whatever kind of way that you encapsulate him. But let's go with the school bully. The school bully doesn't go after the football team. They go after the little nerd in the corner playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? I mean, that's
Pretty
who they go
much.
after. So you can reliably assume they're not going to pick a fight. So when he's saber rattling about nuclear weapons, or when his propagandists on TV are saber rattling about, well, let's wait till we hit Berlin and London with nuclear weapons. They don't want to do that. They're nowhere near wanting to do that. They're the only ones talking about doing that. In the West, they're not talking about like, let's hit Moscow with nuclear weapons. Nobody's talking about that. So tell me
Pretty
about
much.
that. Why are they doing that? Why are they saying that? Is that, I mean, does the deterrence effect really work? I mean, it seems like
It
they
does.
hurt us.
Unfortunately, it does, and this is the only this is the only ace in their stack of cards, right? The only ace, and the only one that works. So that's of course they're going to be using it, and unfortunately, we see that it works. How much hesitation was there to help Ukrainian when initially the war started?
Hmm.
How much resistance, and it still drags on today. Just 3 years after the war, Ukraine was got permission to strike to defend itself with a
Yeah.
strike long range. So yeah, unfortunately, it works. No, we saw from the recent Joe Rogan "Fuck you Zelensky" kind of statement that it works, and it. I don't know what can be done about that. Of course, they're bluffing because uh, it's like that school bully. If they see a weakness, they're gonna exploit it until they crush you. And the only response is to peace through strength, to stand firm, and like Reagan or Kennedy, like just stand firm. And because the other thing is, like the school bully, they only understand the language of force.
Hmm.
They don't understand the language of facts, of truth, of rationale. They don't understand the language of emotions, of empathy, of compassion. No, they imitate on that. They function on that primitive level of reptilian brain that all humans have. Like, my father is stronger than your father. My dick is bigger than your dick. That's their primitive language, and this is you don't want to necessarily go down to that language, but at the same time, you have to communicate to them on that language so that they understand. You got to be like, oh yeah, come at me, bro, come at me. This 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 will signal to them, okay, okay, okay. Because as soon as you go like, oh, don't touch me, they will just start coming to you and coming at you. This is like basic psychology 101, and we see that the strategy peace through strength worked uh, brilliantly through the whole Cold War. They just as long as Moscovites try to do something like that, uh, this tank standoff in Berlin or the Cuban crisis, Kennedy didn't even blink. He's like, "Oh yeah, come at me." Reagan as well is like this freaking empire of evil, fucking crush them.
Yeah,
That
he was
worked.
caught on a hot mic joking about how the bombing will start in 5 minutes. I've just outlawed the Soviet Union, and the bombing starts in 5 minutes. He didn't mean to get caught on that. He was just joking, but the Russians really thought he was crazy. Like they thought like he could do something nuts here, like, and right. So with that, as with what you just said, and with what we're just talking about with Reagan, it's interesting how the Ukrainians stood up and like Putin thought he was going to roll him over in a couple of weeks. What? So I first started really paying attention after I heard the "I need ammunition, not a ride," and I was like, "Whoa!" He said, "What? That's awesome!" Like, and so then spent the next few weeks looking at Zelensky, and I wrote a little ebook about Zelensky and followed it through the first few months of the war. And my initial impression was Zelensky is this interesting figure, but then I realized he's more of a embodiment of the Ukrainian personality or mindset or culture or worldview or something along those lines. So what is it about Ukraine that's keeping them from just rolling over as opposed to, say, Chechnya or what it looks like has happened in Georgia politically or whatever else?
Right. In Chechnya, they also stumbled. It was also supposed to be easy, but they got stuck. And actually, their original plan. I'm actually right now editing a video explaining this. Their original plan in 1995 was to squash Chechnya, who declared independence, and then transfer their troops from Caucasus into Crimea, and get their Crimea in 1995. They were actually preparing that, but they got stuck in Chechnya. In Georgia, of course, you got a Georgian perspective. They had part of the country occupied since 2008, and uh, they've lived in this fear of war restarting at any moment for so long that their spirit almost got broken, that they are like, God, please, no matter what, as long as there is no war. But we see they're fighting for their right now.
Mhm.
We see the pro-Russians guy is an oligarch who steals money, basically identical situation to Ukraine with Yanukovych. Uh, um, Although not that identical, but still, Georgians are fighting. And I wanted to reflect on your comment about the mafia. I think that is a really good analogy as well, because it was indeed a St. Petersburg mafia. If that's where Putin started out, he ran St. Petersburg like a mafia, and we see that how Prigozhin ended. That
Mhm.
was clear mafia move. You caught me, you're out. So it's interesting how those mentalities of school bully and the mafia combines. Maybe they have some interception points where, like, they collide. So definitely, that's what they are. Plus the imperialism. If you paint the three bubbles of overlapping
Yeah,
mafia, school
the Venn
bully,
diagram.
imperialism,
Yeah.
that's where Russians are.
Yeah. So what is it about the Ukrainian mentality that was allowing it to
Mm.
stand up when it was like the first couple days of the war, I was like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. They're going to roll right over, and they stood up. They were like handing out arms like candy, and they stood up and they fought back. And the world didn't see it. Assad fled, right? I mean, Zelensky didn't send a clear message, and the people stood. And okay, what's going on there?
Right. Interesting parallel. Is it an interesting parallel? When Hitler was invading France, it was just an easy walk for him, but not Putin was not an easy walk. Um, it's as probably has to do with historical freedom-loving attitude that Ukrainians always had. As I said, we for many centuries before had a freely elected uh, guy who would rule over us. We even have a saying that among two Ukrainians, there are three kings. Basically, everyone's like, "Oh, I want to rule." No one, like, so that mentality, and then
Say that again. Did I hear that correctly? Say that phrase.
among two Ukrainians, there are three kings.
Two Ukrainians, three kings.
Pretty much. I'm might be not translating it correctly, but the essence is the same. Every Ukrainian knows how to rule their country better than the other. But no one has the right to tell us how to rule our country, especially from Moscow.
So you might have heard this. I heard this first, I think, in Lithuania, because I've been over in the neighborhood. I haven't been in Ukraine. I've been in Lithuania. I've been in Belarus, believe it or not, Romania, Bulgaria. I heard a 5-year plan. Remember those 5-year plans? A 5-year plan
Yeah.
is completed in 4 years with three teams of two. Wait, with 5-year plan is completed in 4 years with three teams of two people on one paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah. Brutal.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail you, but I that
Oh,
that three kings, two people thing got me.
yeah. That's the context, and unfortunately, this rule paid a tragedy in our history before, because even when we were original Russia, we got we got conquered by the Mongol horde because we got split up. Everyone was fighting regional fighting, and if we're not united, we easily conquered. The same thing happened when Moscow Empire destroyed our statehood in 18th century. Um, we were split up, and the same thing, almost the same thing happened. Yeah, the same thing happened when the communists already came to Ukraine. We had a Ukrainian National Republic, but due to centuries of brainwashing under the empire, some people like, oh, they're friends, they're friends. We should just accept them. We should accept the communists. And the other half of Ukraine is like, no. So I think it's always the case. The 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 power. Um, the unification is strength and disunification is weakness, and
Mhm.
that's what Moscow propaganda is focusing on, especially in Ukraine for sure, but also in the United States. It doesn't matter whom to support, left or right, doesn't matter what causes, as long as it steers chaos and divides people.
Yeah.
Dividing people, that's their goal, because breaking unity, and to the degree we see the polarization of United States society, uh, what do you think? Is the pendulum going to swing back? Everything's going to stabilize in the United States?
I would hardly say everything's going to stabilize, but a pendulum will be swinging the other direction. One of the one of the highest leading indicators for people voting for Trump was not just being conservative or even Republican, but even further than that was anti-racism sentiment. That doesn't mean that you're pro-racist, but you're not buying this agenda of because I'm from this particular group, I get these certain rights or I'm oppressed or whatever else. That anti-racism, like I'm tired of having being told I'm a racist because I don't believe it that way. Where people
Mhm.
before anti-racism even became a thing would say, well, Martin Luther King Jr. said, judge people by the color, content of their character, not the color of their skin.
Mhm.
People like that are having an allergic reaction to that. And so that's part of it. Part of it's also the populism movement, and you can feel that populism rising up in Europe just like you can in the United States. So there is a, a a tide going the other direction now, but I don't think that we're going to just all get along and sing kumbaya anytime soon. But the tide is reversing and going the other direction from where
That's
it's
good.
been over the last 4 years. That's for sure. But when we're talking about like this mentality, you started to talk about it, and this is where I wanted to go next with the Moscow uh Moscovia becoming, taking the name Russia. That's even the name of your video, the theft of the millennia, how Moscovia rebranded itself as Russia. That's probably that's one of your most popular videos.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I want people to go back out to your YouTube channel and watch that video. Tell us just a little bit of a teaser of that.
Mm. Right. I don't know how you're perceiving this information. It might sound really bold because I've been into this education for a while. To me, it sounds so apparent that they have taken the name of our state, medieval state. They wanted because they were vassal to the Golden Horde. That's how Moscovia got born. They were serving to the Khanate.
So
They
hold
were
on, let
paying.
me interrupt you just for a second.
Mhm.
So we're talking about Russia.
Yeah.
So, just for people who might not understand all the context, we're talking about how Russia stole the name Russia from what was they were Moscovia, and I'm just
Mhm.
backing up for people who might not have the
Right.
full context.
I guess I'll distill it even more. There was original Russia. Let's call it Kievan Rus. It's called. Some people call it Kievan Rus. So there was Kievan Rus, and the region where Moscow was its colony. We see from chronicles how Kiev waged 3 wars with the people, Turco-Finnish people, by the way. They're not even Slavic in origin. They waged a war to conquer them, and they were paying taxes to Kiev. Now Kiev got destroyed by Golden Horde, and within the Golden Horde, the Moscovia rose, and they rose to power. They traded with the West. They were selling fur, and they were getting Western technology, and that's why they went eastwards and conquered all those. They were literally bows and arrows against muskets. So similar thing as Spanish. What do you call them? Spanish conquered South America, basically. Same way
Conquistadors or something or something?
conquistadors.
Yeah.
Same way, same way Muscovites conquered all the East, because the technology advancement, that was the edge. Western technology versus no Western technology, plus the smallpox disease. So it was a breeze for them to go all the way back, all the way to Alaska. And then in the 17th centuries, they're like, wow, we're so freaking huge, but what is our origin? Our origin is Golden Horde? No, thanks. Let's take this Russia identity, because in fact, Russia was as strong as Byzantine. There was one king of Russia, he actually conquered Constantinople once. He came to Constantinople like, there you go. So Kiev was actually one of the biggest cities, and everybody knew Kiev. Everybody knew Russia, what Russia was, because the Russia intermarried the France, Germanic,
Mhm.
Scandinavians. Uh, so, and they just took our identity, which was kind of normal back then, like the Holy Roman Empire of Germanic people. They were like, we're a successor to Roman Empire. The same way Moscow's like, we're a successor to Russia, we're gonna take that identity, and they're still rolling with that. And I have a theory that they have stuck in the 17th century. And you know how in 17th, 18th century there was a formation of nations, like that started with French
Mhm.
Revolution. Most people attribute like, oh, we're French, we're all French. So Muscovites, they never formed into a nation. They remained stuck in the 17th, 18th century as this ethnos that was just converted from into uh, empire-wide ethnos. It was given a wrong, it was given a false history, of course, falsified, that everyone joined them willingly. They're the best, they're the greatest, they're the fluffiest, they're the strongest, they've never lost any wars. All this bunch of myth. And they still live by those myths that were created 300 years ago. But today, why I started that video, it would be fine. You can call yourself whatever you want. Like there's Romania, a country, Romania, that literally goes from Rome. I
Mhm.
don't know much about history, but I don't care. You can call yourself whatever you want. But if at the moment you start justifying attacking Ukraine as we're liberating our Russian historic territory, oh no, this is not your historic territory by no means, and Russia is not even your name. This is like, that video is a defense. We gotta start reverting that the trend back. And I made the same video in Ukrainian, and it got 500,000 views. And slowly but steadily, I think baby steps, we gotta bring the actual reality into forward, that they're not Russia, they are Moscovia. And look, anything about them is actually fake. Like McCain said, gas station.
Yeah, yeah. So as you were talking, two things popped into my head. One was Romania is actually, are actually Roman. Yeah, actually the Romanian language is closest to Old Latin. My kids would study Latin as when in elementary school, right? Uh, Romanian's the closest language to Latin because it was like Romanian legionnaires that stayed
Yeah.
there and then kind of mixed in.
So they have some credibility.
So they actually have kind of a claim to that kind of
Yeah.
name. I get that. What Russia did is much more like this. If you're familiar with Sears and Kmart, if you're in the United States, Sears was an old brand legacy name of a store. There's not a
Hmm.
lot of them anymore. Kmart was like this kind of um, discount store that had cheap goods that was kind of bad. Well, Kmart at one point bought Sears Holding and then took their name. That's kind of what the Russians did with acquiring Russia from what Moscovia was. And anyway, that's just how I think about things. Okay, before I tell them again how to go find you, what other thoughts do you have about anything Russian propaganda, or how we should think about the Russians, or how we should try to understand that, and then we'll wrap up.
I think Reagan summarized it really well in one statement: peace through strength. And I just continue it: peace through strength from now on forward. You cannot relax.
Okay.
Democracies and freedoms should be upkept like a garden. If you let the weeds grow, it's gonna die. You gotta keep it. Uh, the other thing I also wanted your perspective on. So I'm making a video right now how we missed hundreds of signs that Moscow Empire is evil,
Mm.
starting from Putin killing journalists, Putin killing someone with, I'm sorry, radioactive polonium, Putin killing hundreds, 100,000 people in Chechnya, 30,000 in Georgia, uh, him killing all the hostages in Beslan, how he treated Kursk, how he got all the medias in his hands centralized, state-run doping program for crying out loud. Darren, can you tell me why United States pressed the reset button with terrorists in 2008?
We always want to reset we've done more resets and none of them have ever worked because we think that we can somehow get along here. I think Timothy Snyder from Yale is absolutely right. Russia has to lose so that Russia can think, you know what, this whole empire thing, this isn't working. I'm going to join the 21st century. Only if they lose will they get to that point. And without losing, they will just continue to think that they can keep doing the same stuff that they're doing. I think that's where we are. But we keep setting or trying to create a new reset, trying to think that if we just reset it hard enough, it'll start working again. It's not going to work again. The software is buggy. This is a feature, not a bug of the way that their system works and their mentality works. And you just have to start over, start fresh. It can be done too. I like think about the Germans after World War II or the Japanese post World War II. Total defeat caused them to go, you know what? We gotta we gotta do this differently. And without that, I don't think we're gonna get uh to a place where they're going to continue to where they won't
Right.
continue to do what they're doing.
If you keep pressing resets, they're not going to lose. That's the thing too.
No, they'll see it as weakness. They'll see it as, oh,
Oh yeah,
so they're just
yeah.
giving up on this. Okay, 5 more years, we're coming back for the next
But
thing.
what about Americans in let's say 2008 that they were okay to press reset with someone? Let me remind you that he murdered Litvinenko in 2004 with polonium. How, for example, how does American knowing that, oh, this guy killed someone with radioactive polonium, let's press reset with them? How does it coincide in one head?
I don't think they were paying close enough attention to realize just how stupid what you just said sounds. Not what you said, but I mean how stupid it sounds that, oh
Right.
yeah, but he kills it with polonium. Let's set a reset. Like they weren't even necessarily connecting it, or they're just living their life and going on doing other stuff, not realizing just how much of a threat was brewing under the surface. Um, it's not quite to the point of the British with Chamberlain, because the British
Hmm.
after World War One really like adamantly like we don't want another one of these world wars. We just don't want this, and so they were set against it. We just weren't paying attention. I think there's a difference there.
Hmm. You think Trump is going to be a Chamberlain or a Churchill?
I don't know what Trump is going to do. Trump is a wild card. I've always said he's a wild card, but he seems to be breaking to a place that is seems more positive than we thought he would be. And like yesterday in Euromaidan Press, I think it was, they were talking about how Ukrainians have the most positive outlook of Trump of anyone in Europe. Like, how about that? So he could turn out to be positive. I don't know. I'm not going to bet on that one way or another. But like his rhetoric was terrible during the election. I mean, just clearly terrible. But it looks like so. Here's my read. My read is that Zelensky is saying yes, we want peace, but we need a strong and we need a reliable peace that this is not going to happen again. And Trump, we need you to help with this, right? So he's playing into this. Putin is saying, "Let me poke you in the eye. You can't tell us what to do." Like Putin, all his surrogates are saying, "Who does he think he is?" Here, I'm poking him in the eye. That's not going to work out well for Trump, in dealing with Trump, because Trump's going to be Trump. He's going to say, "I'm going to be here making the deal. I'm going to be the alpha dog." Even in saying, "I'm going to make a deal," you're saying, "I'm not here with Zelensky or Putin. I'm above both of you." Like even that, it's like the handshake that we saw with Macron just yesterday or the day before, right? Like there's got to be this. So he's not going to put himself I can tell you this, he will not intentionally put himself in any position where he doesn't look like he is weak. And if if Russia continues on the path that it's on, trying to say, we can make a deal. This is what Solyov said yesterday. We can make a deal as long as it's on our terms. I don't think that's going to play out well for Russia. So if Russia's smart, it's not going to make that kind of noise. It's going to try, but I don't think Russia's going to be that smart. They only seem to have one setting, and that's nuke. I'm just going to be I'm tough.
Mhm.
I'm going to nuke you.
The
You
only
better not. Yeah. So with that being said, I don't think that it's going to work out well for Russia. Now, I don't think it's going to happen in a day either. Like, but Trump never speaks for precision. Like, I'm going to do it in a day. It'll be some kind of process. Um, and
maybe Trump still doesn't know how he's gonna handle it.
no, he has no idea.
Right.
Yeah, no.
He
But
admitted it
he will
was
not put himself in a
difficult.
place where he looks weak, and he will. That could break out really, really well for Ukraine. So that's my assessment.
I think Trump has a little dilemma between personal ego stake of Zelensky. I think he historically doesn't like Zelensky, especially when from that call of impeachment where he asked Zelensky to find some dirt on Hunter Biden, and Zelensky refused. So I think from that time, Trump is holding a grudge on him. On top of that, when Zelensky visited Pennsylvania factory, Trump Trump did not like that. And so he's like, I don't really want to help Zelensky, but at the same time, I don't want to be beneath Russia because that would be perceived as anti-American.
Yes.
So
Okay. So I
yeah,
think you're right. I think he may not like Zelensky, but Zelensky has been doing everything right to be on the right side of Trump here lately, and he really kind of liked Putin. But Putin and his surrogates are doing everything wrong about being on the right side of Trump, where Trump again is not going to let Putin. eh, He's going to do everything possible to not let Putin look like Putin got over on him. That's my understanding of what's going on.
I see a little. I see a little different picture. For example, a recent tweet of Elon Musk. It was like 3 days ago. He retweeted. Um, he retweeted this guy Mario Naval. Quote: Zelensky, I will ask Biden to invite me to NATO. There is no point in talking to Trump. And Elon Musk retweeted that, which clearly strikes at Trump's ego. And then if we look at the news, how Putin and through Lavrov, through all other Kremlin puppets, they're like, oh, Trump is intelligent. Trump is going to do what's right. Trump is so good. And they endorse Kamala as like a reverse effect to say Trump is going to be not good for us. So,
So,
um,
but if you look at the state media, Solyov show and other things along these lines, since the election, they're starting to wig out, going like before the election, there was he's our guy, he's going to do this. They've changed their tune pretty significantly since the election. I showed this yesterday of things that they were saying. My last video about the state media stuff that was on yesterday was like, and Trump, who's he think he is? He's not. That's where they were saying like, we'll make a deal if he wants to do it on our terms. Like, okay,
right.
like keep up with that tone.
I know, right? I like how Kellogg responded. You don't know United States, or like you don't know Trump, you don't know United States, and I feel like it's so true.
Mhm. Okay, well, listen, if you want to hear more about uh, Savage Sage views, go to at savage the underscore sage on YouTube, and you can see him. He's only got 10,500 subscribers, which is crazy because the quality of what he puts out is just awesome. I mean, like, I don't know how much time you put into every video, but it has to be astronomical. Please go check that out and watch either The Theft of the Millennia, which is easily one of his best videos, or his most recent, The Brutally Honest Peek into the Russian Mindset. Yaroslav, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you being willing to meet here, and hopefully some of my viewers will get to know you soon.
Likewise, thank you, Darren, for this opportunity, for exposure, um, strength. Peace through strength.
Peace through strength.
From now on forward.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.